All right, everyone, welcome to Tarnished Bronze. My co-host Patrick is here, and what are we looking at today, Patrick?
Today is the issue that changed it all. It's the Justice League of America annual number two from 1984, and it's Gerry Conway's brainchild to basically change everything about what you know about the Justice League of America, which at this point was surprisingly only 24 years old. I was a little bit surprised.
So
I
the
mean, I
the
guess 24
astonishing,
years is a
yeah,
long time when you're 10, but 24 years now, it doesn't seem that long.
and the sad thing is, Patrick, is the JLA has probably changed less in the last 40 years than it did in the first 30, let's say. Between Detroit Justice League and the Justice League International, they've basically just rehashed the greatest hits, I think. So, that probably says it all, really, right?
Everything old is new again. So yeah, I mean, I don't collect the Justice League now, but I know that they've gone back to the traditional lineup. And yeah, it's definitely more traditional than Justice League Detroit, which was sort of my Justice League. I was 10 years old when this came out, and I did have some previous experience with the Justice League. I think you might be able to check out our uh, coverage of annual number one, which
With
was
yeah,
great.
it's
I
got the
mean, the
tentacles.
issue, I don't know if the podcast was great, judging on the lack of views, but the issue was great. And this one was a good one too, I thought.
And so this is by Gerry Conway and Charlie Patton with I think the cover is by Dick Giordano. Is this your first experience of these two creators, Patrick? Like you're picking this up off the shelf. This is your JLA. Are these your two guys who you're really liking?
Well, now, and I'm sure Conway I had experienced because he had written a lot of one-off stories and I think did a lot of Superman back in the day. So I probably knew his writing. And I love Giordano's cover here. It's
Yeah.
just great. I mean, it really gives rebirth. We've got these new characters. They're so colorful and they're so different. They're mysterious because we don't know anything about them. I think Vixen is a legacy character that has appeared maybe once or twice in Batman, if I'm correct. And then we've got some of the lesser lights of the former JLA, and then superimposed in the clouds in gold, we have the founders that are no longer with the team, and it just I love it. I mean, it's really great. It looks like the Chrysler Building maybe they're standing on, and yeah, it's
Yeah.
just fabulous cover for me. So when I was a kid, as I've said before, I was really attracted to covers, and this would have been one that I would have immediately been drawn to. Lots of new characters to learn about and sort of add to the repertoire of imagination and what's going on with the new team.
It is a motley crew. I like the symbolism of the Golden Age heroes in gold. That's you can read all this stuff with as many interpretations as what you want. Just pointing out though that those new characters like Jerry Conway is a bit of a dab hand when it comes to making new characters. So he's got on his list just here is Firestorm, Commander, Steel. Vixen Vibe and Gypsy. So he's, got a few of these characters that are just bubbling under the currents of the major DC. But Firestorm has a long run. Steel
Oh,
has a
huge.
long run.
And it's interesting. I didn't know that he created Vixen because somehow I knew that Vixen had appeared before. She looked different. So she was redesigned
Okay.
for this Justice League run. But so he must have sort of dug into his archives and decided he liked that character and she was underutilized. And she is a great character. I think maybe her powers are eventually internalized, but right now she's using the totem
Oh,
to
okay.
basically evoke any power of any animal. And so, which is a really unique and great power set. I think maybe Animal Man is like that now, but he wasn't really being used very much in the mid 80s. So this was pretty new. And like I said, I think she had maybe guest starred in a Batman comic book. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the only time that we maybe had seen her before.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that this is not my first Jerry Conway. I think Jerry Conway I had a trade paperback at some point of the death of Gwen Stacy, so that's where I first kind of got in touch with that, and that's a pretty good read. I think that's a death of Captain Stacy or something. Anyway, loads of Spider-Man, so he's kind of in the background there. But this is the first JLA, and this is my first Chuck Patton, and it kind of looks pretty cool too. And the cover does really sell the brand new era kind of thing that's going on here.
And
Um,
this, like I said, this really changed everything. I mean, they literally and figuratively brought the JLA back down to Earth from their satellite headquarters. They added more characterization, more personal interaction, sort of the team when they're off duty. Whereas before, the issues were mostly one-offs of rock'em sock'em robot kind of things, where we have a new villain and we go and fight them. And people often complained about the JLA being very sort of interchangeable and not having too much of their own personalities. But Conway was ready to marvelize them, if you'll excuse
well,
the term. And
that's a great phrase, Patrick, because he's responsible for the death of Gwen Stacy. He's responsible for moving things along
yeah,
in the Spider-Verse, at least, and having that long-running subplot with Norman Osborn and Harry Osborn and so on. So I mean, he has form for crafting within the confines of the genre, um, some sort of compelling work, I think. And I'm ready to be compelled here, Patrick. You're
it's
gonna
funny, I think that it's not looked back on maybe that fondly. I could be wrong, but that's the impression I get when I see things online. Um, and that's really a shame because it takes a lot of courage to shake this up. And there was obviously some editorial reason that they wanted to do this. I'm wondering if it had to do with DC maybe introducing more continuity among their comics. So if we have Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman in so many other comic books doing so many other things, then maybe it's harder with the continuity to also include them. So let's just get rid of them and let's start a whole new team. But I do have some questions later to see what you think about some of the characters that they did let go that were maybe not the heavy hitters. But we'll get to that.
So just so he can get it in, though, he is drawing all of the heavy hitters now, and he's got the sister wives of Hawkman and Hawkgirl. I can never tell um, what's going on there. So he is getting Charlie Patton is getting the drawings that he can sell in there, and they have a space shuttle and all sorts of stuff is going on. And it seems like we're just cold starting at the end of a mission, right?
Yeah, this picks up from the end of the Earth-Mars war.
Okay.
So Mars has made an attempt to invade Earth. The Justice League has barely turned them back, I think, with maybe an 11th hour save by Martian Manhunter. And during this Earth-Mars war, a lot of the heavy hitters didn't show up to the chagrin of people like Aquaman and the ones who did come. So it was very difficult to turn back the invasion. The satellite headquarters was destroyed in the ensuing war. And these panels really, I think, capture, even in their silence, the hopelessness of the team and the fact that you can tell this is a very pyrrhic victory for the team, and things are different. I mean, you can sense it from the drawings, and I think the art style is really
Yeah,
great
look at
here.
that. Look at that body language with Aquaman just walking away from the crowd.
Yeah.
That's hard hitting stuff. Um,
And oh yeah, I think it's the next slide. The next slide with Black Canary and Green Arrow, both very, very
that's
sort
a
of
it's just an excellent
remorseful.
panel. It's great emotion. I'm sure that there's an undercurrent of disappointment of them with the JLA here. I can just read that into this panel. And then all might not be well in Green Arrow and Black Canary's world, because I think Mike Grell is just going to go crazy with Green Arrow and the Longbow Hunters and all this stuff pretty soon. So Green Arrow is going to kind of become one of the very best like second tier DC characters pretty soon, I think. Um,
Now I did skip ahead because I saw that next slide coming up, and the art is just so great there. I love to see these characters drawn. Again, the new JLA characters are all very different in terms of design and colors and their backgrounds. But the old JLA characters, the supporting cast, I was always fascinated by them. I think Red Tornado is just such a beautifully designed character and
Yeah,
very unique, being an android. But basically, what happens, like I said, not to get ahead of myself, is Aquaman goes home. He finds out that his wife, I wondered what you thought about this.
yeah,
Maybe if this would happen in your life, that he goes home before meeting the JLA at the United Nations and finds that Mara has left him. She leaves a message, a dear Arthur letter, if you will,
yeah, yeah.
and says that she feels like she's no longer important in his life because he's left her to fight this interplanetary war with the JLA and left her behind. I mean, that's some severe expectations there, right? I mean, I
Uh,
think any spouse probably should understand if you're a superhero that you have to push back an invasion by another planet, right?
I was just going to make a gag about Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, and then I realized that Nicole Kidman actually plays his mum in the movie, so it's like totally inappropriate now.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, it just seems to me that sometimes the spouses or the wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, and the somewhat significant others, they really are just jettisoned is the word when they become surplus to plot requirements.
And the way to do that is to make them sort of termagants, right? Like shrew, she's like a shrew at this point. Poor Mira.
um,
Now, I did say that maybe she was not thinking clearly because their son has recently died. So, maybe it's a combination of things. And not to, give away spoilers, but she does end up joining the new league at a certain point. So maybe we'll do there is a very good I think you say Despero. And there's a pretty good Amazo story arc with the Justice League Detroit, and I'm pretty sure Mara is involved in both of those. So she does come around,
so
but
she'll be coming down the pike because spoilers, we may be covering this tranche of issues after we get through the what I call the interstitial Avengers.
I love
So,
that.
but nonetheless, this is where it starts. And were you often seeing annuals on the shelf at the grocery store and stuff, Patrick? Like this is an annual. This isn't a, issue, I think 261 or something is when it starts,
Yeah.
right? Like in
Or
the
is
issue.
261 when it
Oh,
ends?
okay. I'm 240
That
something.
it just rang a bell. I could be wrong, but
Yeah.
that rang a bell that I'm wondering if that's when Justice League was finally ended for JLI. But either way, yes, I think annuals maybe were easier to get. One of the reasons was you're out of school, so
Okay.
you're in
Oh,
town, maybe visiting my grandparents more often. So I think, and also annuals more bang for the buck, right? They're bigger.
yeah.
Maybe they bring in cover artists that are maybe a little bit more highly esteemed, so that also catches the kids' eye. Seems to me that maybe at least DC. I don't know about Marvel, but it seems like DC maybe has fewer annuals these days. And I could be wrong, but I mean, in the summers back when I was a kid, it seemed like almost every series had an annual that came out in the summer. And
Yeah.
also, annuals don't always come out in the summer these days either. I'm certain on the solicitations pages that I've seen annuals come out like this fall, for example, for Marvel.
I think we have a combination of both. The constant reboots make the annual a little bit silly, and the constant tie-ins play the role of the annual, except it will be, it's showing my age. Blackest Night #1 will be the special annual for the entire line, and then Blackest Night, for example, #7 or whatever, will run that sort of summer event with some tie-in specials that will take the place of the annuals, almost to the point of incomprehension, might I add. Whereas at least the annual is like a one-off story usually, like that last
Yes.
JLA that we read, a complete tale. It drags a new reader in. A lapsed reader feels like they might get some value for money, or some parental or guardian figure can just go, "Hey, my kid might enjoy this," and it's not too complicated.
And
Um,
for my experience, this was a little bit new. So back to your original point, I think is to use an annual to do a complete reboot and almost serve as an issue number one of a new sort of newfangled series using the old numbering and the old title. That it, at least in my experience, is a little bit new. But to catch up on the plot, Aquaman has now come back from being left by his wife. His son's dead. I mean,
but he
he really
does
has
have a nice
nothing.
grin. He's not too distraught about it. Like
I
his
think
first.
well, he's very stiff upper lip guy, and they're gonna definitely play that up in this series. But he goes back to the UN and surprises his teammates by announcing to the United Nations that he's disbanding the Justice League effective immediately. The Justice League members that are still present are very surprised.
Back
And
here.
only Zatanna and Elongated Man say that they have the time and the willingness to commit to the new team and to provide the commitment that Aquaman and the world feel is necessary in terms of in terms of being this world protecting team that basically almost let the world become overrun by the Martians. At that time, the rest of these characters, Hawkman, Hawkgirl, who are a couple, by the way. Red Tornado, the android, Green Arrow, Black Canary, also a couple. They sort of go their separate ways. I think Adam maybe is in there as well. Um, Now, one question I had for you, and this is what I alluded to at the beginning, is I just wonder what DC was planning on doing with these characters. Like Red Tornado didn't have his own comic. There's no way. I don't think Black Canary or Green Arrow, maybe I don't know that they had their own comic either. And these are really
Oh,
long legacy characters with a lot of history, and they're just throwing the baby out with the bathwater here.
so I think like I said, Green Arrow is gonna just go off with Mike Grell, former Legion artist, then Warlord artist, and then is just gonna do amazing stuff with Green Arrow. So Green Arrow is kind of out of the picture. I don't know if the JSA is getting revived at this point. So that's where Black Canary might be heading, or she may be also appearing in the Black Hawks, which I think is by the main man Howard Chaykin. So that kind of thing with those pilots. So I think she has some sort of traction in that. So they're all getting pulled from pillar to post, as you said. The big three are getting prepared for what will become Crisis. I don't know if this is like already in the pipeline. I imagine it must be.
I was
Um,
just going to say they probably were also doing a little bit of preparation for Crisis, which I think started in '85, but this is summer of '84, so they had to have known that was coming down the pipe.
and then Hawkman and Hawkgirl have got to get into ready for their late 80s series, which at this point is like, 5, 6 years in the future. So I don't know what they're doing. And I
They need
don't
to
think
rest for a
DC ever
while and
has a
get.
good idea of we just went through Invasion with the Cosmic Crisis. They're really not that good with running their cosmic characters.
Martian Manhunter also steps out of the shadows at this
Okay.
time and decides that he's going to join the core group of three that makes it a core group of four of Aquaman as the stodgy leader. The Martian Manhunter is going to be the alien powerhouse. We've got Zatanna, the sorceress, who is also a bit of a voice of reason, and then the comic relief in Elongated Man, who brings along his wife, Sue, who is going to serve, I guess, as the human outlook. And as I mentioned earlier, I think to you in private that felt like they were doing a few parallels with the Avengers. We've got this prototype ship that they're flying in. It resembles a Quinjet. We've got the Jarvis-like human character. That spot's being held by Sue, who's going to be, outside the action, but kind of the voice of the human side of things. And otherwise, in any team book, you have to have the different elements. So they're really filling out the elements. Vixen shows up. She wants to be a part of the team, and then Steel, a mysterious hero in red, white, and blue, shows up to take them to Detroit, where Ralph, elongated man, says he's lived in Detroit and looks below and says he sees Lake Michigan. And Lake Michigan is nowhere near Detroit. So sorry, having lived in
Yeah.
Chicago for 10 years, that was a big bit of a glaring error by the writer. But we'll let him go with that one. Didn't have access to maps as readily as we do in the internet age. So that's a pretty big mistake, though.
Yeah,
Couldn't
no,
help but point that out.
we don't need any of that book learning in JLA, Patrick. They're all just general Great Lakes. We don't worry
They're
about
all
specifics.
great.
Yeah.
They're all great in their own right.
And
One thing that I really love to see that I cannot be remiss to mention is Aquaman is getting power ups, and I just love seeing this character who's been underutilized and really not gotten his due. I felt like he was kind of unique, in a universe full of blue haired uh, superheroes and alter egos. He's a blonde. He's been a bit, in my opinion, mistreated. So they've upped his telepathic powers. He's
oh,
able
okay.
to sort of read Vixen's mind and get her self-image to locate her when she infiltrates their sort of penthouse that they're hanging out in. He's able to knock a steel door off its hinges, which only makes sense since his body can survive the depths of the ocean. And I just really love that he's sort of getting his due and being able to show his leadership skills. And this is just the beginning. And I feel like he's really treated well, um, from my memory, in the course of this series. So I just thought
Well,
that was great.
that sounds good, Patrick, because I'm going to go along the ride with you. You're going to be rereading these. I'm going to be reading them for the first time. I'm really hoping that Aquaman kind of ups his game, because it's just so turgid, some of the things that he usually has to deal with. But at least we've got someone who can draw some good water scenes. So the panels here are actually pretty good for the underwater.
Oh, great.
I kind of think that some artists don't draw the underwater very well. And if you're doing a team book like JLA and Aquaman is sort of forced on you, I can understand you not wanting to go too far with it. But it seems like Charlie Patton is just going really good with this.
This is the kind of
And
art that I love. This strong lines, it's not super realistic. I love the way that he's turned the panels on
yeah,
their end. Yeah, it's really good.
with some good backgrounds. And how do we know that we've arrived in Detroit, Patrick?
Well, elongated man has lived there, so he kind of looks down and says, "Oh yeah, look, it's
Okay.
it's Lake Michigan in Detroit." So he's a little confused. I was like, "Are they in Chicago?" No, they're in Detroit.
Okay. So
And
we've got
Steel,
Yeah,
go
we've
ahead.
got two new characters already, Vixen and Steel, and then Sue Dibney is giving us our Jarvis sort of character. So we've got our Avengers 84 Roger Stern sort of thing going on. So we've shaken up the membership, but we're in a new town. And what happens when you're in a new town? You kind of meet some new people, right?
Yep, exactly. That's kind of how we met.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
While I
the
was
next
graffitiing in the town, you stopped me from being a hooligan.
exactly called the cops on you, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
So yeah, a young graffiti artist named Paco Ramon, but I think we just know him as Paco right now. And he's begged by a presumably homeless man to break up some gang violence that's happening on their home turf of Cameron Street, which happens to be very close to where the JLA's new secret headquarters is. And he uses his vibration powers to easily break up the gang violence and do a little breakdancing on the side, as one does in the mid 80s. I can tell you from experience that we were locking and popping and twirling on our heads every couple of hours, really. I mean, school would be, class would be broken up with someone throwing down a piece of cardboard and sliding on their backs. It
Indeed,
was it
I
was a
know
crazy
you. You
time
could carry around cardboard with you at all times, just in case you have
at
that,
all times. It
Patrick.
was a great time to be alive.
And I do know that you also carry around a bandana just in case you really need to represent those colors when when
Well,
you're
I
doing
sweat a
your
lot
recreational
too.
activities.
I sweat a lot too. So when I'm breakdancing, if I want to still be able to see the crowd, then I really need to. I
Now,
mean,
do
I'm nothing
you?
like Ray Gun from your end of your neck of the woods, but
No, no. World number one break dancer, I believe.
yeah.
So Patrick, are you a fan of rolling the t-shirt sleeves up, of cutting your own muscle shirt, or getting a pre-made muscle shirt?
Now, okay, it's funny you should say this. Honestly, then this, by the way, this is not rehearsed, but it's crazy you should say this because in '84 I wasn't really playing a lot of junior tennis tournaments, but soon after that I was playing a lot of tournaments. I'm from Kentucky originally, and it's extremely hot and humid, and I did used to always roll up my t-shirt sleeves. I don't know why I didn't just wear a tank top, but roll up the t-shirt sleeves because I would sweat so much they get very heavy and kind of hang down. And always with the bandana for sure. Sweat control is of the utmost importance. So yeah, I actually do have some experience with that.
Okay, I just hope that you looked as good as Vibe here. While he
It did not
maintains
look
his
as
side
good.
part, he's doing all this flipping and vibration powers, but his hair is still in place. He's, making sure these hoodlums are seeing the coming off second best. It just really is really great kinetic stuff on this page. Like, it really does make me happy seeing this is so well crafted. It's so silly but so good, and I know it is silly. The audience knows it's silly and the people making it know it's a bit silly, but nonetheless that's what a big element of the fun is in this story. And we're kind of introducing this guy. He's a graffiti artist. He's sort of edgy, but is he really from one of these rundown families? We'll find out a bit later, I guess. There's a bit of a twist in the old tale for Vibe.
That's right.
So that's one of our new sort of characters, and he's just on the streets, right? And then do we get the hard cut back to HQ yet, or are there still some subplots going on?
Well, actually, when Vibe's doing his breakdancing, gang violence stopping show, Steel and Vixen actually catch sight of that, and I think maybe they're buying groceries or something, and they go back and inform Aquaman. Of course, Aquaman isn't too keen on having a bunch of underage heroes on the team, as opposed to Professor Xavier. He understands that that's probably an insurance liability.
This is a family
Um,
channel, Patrick.
yeah, exactly. Um, so as Aquaman sort of nixing that idea, Paco strolls into headquarters. Their secret headquarters apparently is not so secret. He strolls in, and Aquaman, in a perfect example of how the characterization and how the writing on this book has changed. Aquaman puts his arm on Vibe's shoulder, and Vibe instinctually zaps him with his vibration powers, knocks Aquaman into the wall, and Aquaman says with a bemused expression, on the other hand, let's talk. And to me, that's just very not what you would necessarily see in old JLA. It's just a tiny touch of comic relief, and especially from someone other than Elongated Man, from the stodgy, former king or current king of Atlantis. I don't know how he, as we always talk about with Namor, uh, he's not the prince, he's the king of Atlantis in this case, but I
Yeah,
don't know if
yeah.
he's actually the current king or not. He may have been deposed at this time anyway. So yeah, so now Vibe is sort of a de facto member of the team. And the next new character to get introduced is Gypsy.
Okay, well, I think we get into Gypsy a little bit later on this session, but you know, was she someone who was like pseudo created before, or is she new?
As far as I know, she's completely new. I consider her a cross between Cyndi Lauper and Calliope Jones from
Okay.
the old soap opera Days of Our Lives. For anybody of that age and interest, probably not many.
Speaking
But
of
she was
speaking
very
of
of the
Days of Our
time.
Lives, Patrick, before we get into the introduction of Gypsy and our new team, um, I found this to be a really well drawn, but just very strange. Does this seem strange to you?
It was out of character. It was another example of how they're really sort of changing the characters and giving them a lot of personality that we haven't seen before. I don't think Zatanna has been known to be this self-possessed, sexy woman who would go and hit on the, Dale Gunn is shown here. He's the person who sort of runs the secret headquarters. He has some kind of relationship with young Steele and also a connection with his grandfather, who I guess is probably the person we assume that is responsible for Steele's sort of cyborg based powers. So Dale
When
gives us
women
an insight
in
into why Steele is
lingerie,
an
sorry,
angry
sorry,
young
Patrick.
man. Sorry,
When,
that's okay.
when women in lingerie confront me, I like to make sure I'm wearing my best neckerchief as well. So that's one big plus. And the other thing
And
I
when
would say,
women in lingerie approach me, I always want to make sure that they have a plate full of cookies because otherwise, what's the point?
yeah, it just there's so many things to unpick in this page. Like for whatever reason, Steele is just going nuts. Just all sorts of things. There's only one chair in this massive
Again,
HQ.
at
Another,
least
but
they have one. Your complaint is always about the lack of places to sit. I think this shows where your priorities are. There's a chair, as opposed to the Avengers don't have a single chair in the whole damn place. The JLA at least has one.
yeah, but it's for the computer expert, which is probably fair enough. And I just love these panels. This pattern is a real revelation to me. I can't get enough of how he's putting so much in each. All the characters are really straightforward to identify. I'm never really confused. I just sort of I had to put this in as a bit of a breakup before we get to the real Archie comics
One
leading.
time
So.
out. Is he
Oh,
doing a crossword puzzle in the second panel? If so, I'm a fan.
it's a crossword computer. That's how they make the New York Times crossword. This guy is helping the JLA. He's just hitting on Zatanna. He's drinking his milk and his cookies. He's making crosswords. He's making suits like water suits, so Aquaman feels at home.
Yeah.
This
Now,
guy's
see, there
doing.
was a reason for that because at this time, I think Aquaman's sort of origin was that he had to return to the water every hour.
Oh,
So
every hour.
now they freed him from that constraint.
Okay,
That's my memory of it.
so they can't just hose him down like an elephant, and it's good enough.
Yeah, they. Now he's moistened from the inside.
And is that salt water, Patrick, or is that fresh water?
I don't know that it matters. I don't know that they ever made the distinction of whether it had to be salt water.
Okay.
So I think just any kind of water will do.
All right. So he's just bathing himself in Gatorade. We've got a few new members of the team. They're all interacting as a team. They all seem to have different motivations and different ideas and different personalities, which is really interesting for the reader. And then I actually think that the artist really does sell these kind of tone, like these kind of human interactions, and especially this kind of human interaction, which I think I might have shown out of order. But nonetheless, this is where we meet the family of, is it what's the real name of this guy?
Ramon.
Okay. Yeah. So he's not at home alone, is he? He's got he goes back to a family and he's not really from the streets, is he, Patrick?
Yeah, he's got this great family life. And I think what was really interesting to me reading this now, you know what, 40 years later, is that I don't want to say introducing because I know it was a thing, but the author's talking about basically, without using the phrase, talking about Paco code switching.
Yeah.
Steele goes home with Vibe to meet his family to have dinner. And he notices that Vibe is no longer start talking with his street lingo jive, that he's speaking like a well-educated young man among his family. And that's sort of fascinating to me. Granted, I was only 10, but I don't remember code. I remember a lot of things being discussed. I went to a liberal arts college, and I remember a lot of things being discussed around that time. political correctness and that phrase had entered the vernacular, and talking about these sort of things that have become de rigueur for us now. But I don't remember ever learning the phrase code switching, or discussing that, even in college, and that would have been probably about 6 years later. So this is really before its time for me.
Yeah, I think we all just did it, but we didn't know we knew it was a thing and we knew we did it, and you sort of talk to your audience or talk to the social Maloo who is around. You want to meet people on a level, right? Just to grease the wheels of social interaction. And I think for the better, a lot of that has changed. Like you don't have to hide yourself as much, maybe, Patrick, but there was definitely no phrase that I knew of for that until maybe the last 5 years or so, really.
Actually, that makes me wonder if maybe we just complicate things that we've always done. Maybe
I think
this,
so.
yeah, that's a good point. That's very astute, Matt. Very good.
Yeah, this we might not be doing too much book learning on Tarnished Bronze, but nonetheless we can get ourselves some life lessons from these comic books that are over 40 years old.
Well, we're diving right into the cultural relevance and whatnot. So yeah, this is Steele meeting Vibe's sister, and Romeo meet Juliet,
Is
as you
is
say.
is is foreshadowing the key to good writing, Patrick?
It definitely is, and Vibe is not a fan of this. He immediately sort of jumps bad. So we know that this is going to be a potential source of conflict going forward between the new fast friends. Steele, who had originally introduced Vibe as a potential member. Of course, Vibe sort of took care of that on his own by just strolling into headquarters. So
Yeah.
these guys are already young. They're young. They're virile young American men in Detroit. They've become friends, and Steele is falling already for Paco's sister, and what's going to happen with that? Well, stay tuned.
Let's see how the Marvelization of the JLA goes. And so I don't think we have any major plot points to wrap up. I do hope that this next page has all of the characters at least. So I think in the last panel we have just more dancing for reasons that escape me. But I think, yeah, that should
It
be
was
all of the
1984. That's the
yeah.
reason.
Okay.
I'm telling you, that's all we were dancing through life back then. To quote a very popular movie that's going on right now. But yeah, not only the the headquarters is one thing. There is one other plot point. The headquarters is then infiltrated again after Vibe by Gypsy, who
Oh,
is a complete mystery. She's captured by Martian Manhunter. She escapes. Um, Again, Aquaman is just can dumbfounded by the fact that everybody can get into the secret headquarters. And right when he's sort of reacting to that fact, the doorbell rings. Yes, their secret headquarters has a doorbell, and who is it? But the denizens of Cameron Street have come to have a good old fashioned block party and welcome the team to the neighborhood. And so, yeah, there's dancing, there's a party, and the team is set up for the future. We're ready to roll with these new characters, and what's going to happen with Gypsy.
and I think I shortchanged Gypsy in these because we're going to have a little four issue sort of spotlight, right, in the Justice League issues pretty shortly. One of them will feature her. So don't fret if you think that we've shortchanged Vixen, Vibe, and Gypsy. They will be back in force very, very soon on an upcoming episode. Patrick, I just want to say thanks so much for forcing me to read this. Like I all I'd heard is kind of this malignment of the Justice League Detroit as though it was utter garbage. And it's definitely not dull. It's got a lot of things that I like about I don't really need, the heroes to be cardboard cutouts. I kind of like them. I would actually just read episodes of them being their own private selves
Yeah.
far more readily than the 18th time that Mars invades
Mhm.
uh, Earth or Mars attacks, if you will. So this was really pleasing to me. I thought I'd seen it all, but somehow this was a real blank spot. And they don't really get any callbacks in those big major events. Like there's no little vibe special for Infinite Crisis or whatever. So that's maybe another reason why it wasn't so familiar. So these, even though it's 40 years old and has a lot of like the accoutrement of something that's from the 80s has with, the outfits and stuff. I'm not that put off by it. Like it's of its time. It's actually done really fun. The dated dialogue is actually meant to be dated when you get into that code switching thing. Like he's
Yeah.
meant to be forcing it a little bit. And what you read is sort of this is like a 50-year-old man trying to talk like a 15-year-old in 1984 is actually that. This is like, well, albeit some 17-year-old's thoughts about what he should be saying on the streets. And that's when you kind of use that phrase code switching, like that gives us a label to put on it, if you will. But I really loved that. And Patrick, this is like 39, 40 pages, I think. But this is not tiresome to read. Like there's some things that
Oh,
are 20 pages. We will be going through them later today, and they're tiresome. Like I get tired. It might even be,
so tedious.
yeah.
Yes.
This
No,
is
this,
not
and
that.
let me point out, no villain. No big battle scene. I mean, there are a few little fights. Steele ends up sort of sparring with Dale Gunn when he breaks into the bunker with the JLA. When Vixen sort of busts in on the party, there's a little bit of a to do with her. They capture Gypsy, so there's a little bit of action sequence interspersed throughout the issue, but there's no villain. There's no MacGuffin to go get. But it's a setup issue. I mean, so that kind of lends itself to making it more interesting, I think, because they're team building, they're world building, they're resetting up, and that there's a lot more to come. So I think that is to their advantage, but it's difficult, like you said, to write an extra long annual. No special guest star villain, and to make it interesting. And like you said, I definitely have the same instinct that people don't look back fondly on this, but I really think Conway does a great job with this. And if you know what the previous Justice League is like, I mean, this is what really changes the trajectory of how DC treats their team books. Now, granted, Teen Titans was already doing this, probably for a couple of years, so that's different. But Justice League had not really followed suit, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I think the reprints of the Teen Titans when the non-Baxter reprints and the non-Baxter reprints of Legion are outselling like JLA and Superman and Batman right now. The reprint issues, which is testament to why like you adapt or die. Like we got to marvelize these characters or make them more like the Teen Titans and just jazz it up a little bit. Patrick, I know that you kept on reading. I can't wait to read these. And I know that it'll go through up and downs. I think there's maybe 25 to 35 issues of this that we won't maybe look at every single issue. It's gonna have its ups and downs. But this is an idea that stuck. It just so happens that the JLI was another great idea. And I want to know, do you know who's to blame for this ending, Patrick? Like,
Yeah, no, I don't know. And when we get to that, also, I don't remember the details because it's been years since I read this. I have read it more than once, but it doesn't end well.
okay,
I will just say that it doesn't end well, and there are reasons why there aren't callbacks in the sort of label wide extravaganzas that you mentioned.
okay. So
Again, I don't even myself remember all the details, but I can say that much. My recollection is I don't think it ends well. So,
okay,
and I don't
viewers,
know
so
why. I don't. I would say that
stay
maybe
tuned.
my only guess would be that editorially these sort of minor characters weren't enough. If they're not selling thousands of issues, then they're a failure. So even if it's good quality work, it's the dollar speaks. And so my guess would be they thought they could make more money by introducing some bigger characters, right? Because Batman was he immediately in JLI?
He is on the first six to
That's
eight
what I
issues, I
thought.
think.
So,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
probably thought that they needed something to sell more, to push more issues. That would be my guess.
But it doesn't have the heavy hitters though, Patrick. Just so
No,
just so we're
true,
all
true.
aware, it does. So this is a team of second stringers. What I liked about the JLI is it's a team of second stringers, and you can tell these stories and make them matter because, like, we know Batman is going to come back from whatever kerfuffle he's in, but I'm not so sure about Fire and
Mm.
Ice. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think they have a few more marquee players,
yeah.
right? Because I don't even know what he's called now, but Captain Marvel at the time, right? Wasn't he a member?
Yeah,
So you have a
I'm
few, I
blanking on
think
the rebooted name. Yeah,
Shazam, what
yeah.
I think he's called Shazam now. But yeah, I just feel like the JLI had a little bit more star power, maybe. And maybe to other people, these new characters didn't catch on. But like I said, I'm a sucker for new characters. I love the different power sets. They were unique. Somebody like Gypsy, who, like you said, we're going to get into a little bit more. I already talked about Vixen's power set. Vibration powers. This is great. It steals a little bit of a cyborg knockoff maybe, but he has a very unique, aggressive, sort of aggravated personality. So they all have different personalities and motivations, as you said, and to me that made it for an interesting comic. They were very much challenged by the villains and the situations that they found themselves in, and there was no Superman or Wonder Woman to fly in and save the day. So
No, I really liked it, Patrick. So viewers like, follow, subscribe. You know that we'll be delving into the Detroit Justice League fairly shortly, and we will be seeing how much this train can be derailed or how much of an injustice can be done to the Justice League. So stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next one.